Just when you thought they couldn't innovate anymore, Apple goes ahead and shocks the world with the revival of the AirPower 3-in-1 wireless charger. We all thought this thing was gone. We all thought this thing was dead and it was never coming back, and yet, through the power of Apple intelligence, they found a way to make it work. Let's begin. So it's all starting to make a little bit more sense to me why Apple ditched MagSafe on the iPhone 16e, and I actually feel pretty confident in saying they're probably going to ditch MagSafe on the entire iPhone 17 series. Of course, they want to increase battery capacities and they want to make the iPhone 17 Air as thin as possible, so it makes sense, drop the magnets on the inside, and instead of having this little magnetic cup that attaches to the back of your phone, we can wirelessly charge it with much more freedom thanks to Apple finally figuring out how to do the overlapping magnetic coil system with AirPower. It was originally unveiled way back in 2017, and I just don't think they had the computational know-how to figure out how to evenly distribute power between all of these varying coils. In case you didn't know how AirPower is made, you have to basically overlap all of these different inductive charging coils, and in order to prevent the charging mat from overheating, Apple details all of this in the newsroom post. It's really fascinating. But essentially, the device has to know exactly where all three separate devices are on the charge mat and figure out how much current is needed to exactly get the amount of current that that device requires to have a modest charge rate. So of course, if you put your Apple Watch on the AirPower charge mat, you don't want that to receive a full 20 watts like what the iPhone is capable of receiving inductively. And same thing with AirPods, like those little wearables that you throw down on AirPower, those of course are perfectly happy just charging at 5 watts. So if you only have to route 5 watts to that portion of the AirPower charge mat, it doesn't have to get that hot. It doesn't require that much current. But of course, when you put down a nice beefy 16 Pro Max, you want that thing to get full speeds. You want 20 to 25 watts. So it has to detect the location of these devices really adequately. And I think that is partially thanks to the improved U1 chip that they've been shipping in Apple Watches, AirPods, and iPhones lately. And that helps them track down exactly where to send the most amount of current, and also how to make sure the AirPower charge mat stays cool. But because it requires kind of constant activation and monitoring of the U1 spatial awareness chips across multiple different devices, that's actually where Apple Intelligence comes in. So thanks to the AirPower mat rocking the same chip we find in the iPhone 15 Pro, of course the A17 Pro chip, this is capable of running some basic Apple Intelligence functionality. Of course, AirPower doesn't have a screen, so it's not doing Genmoji or image playgrounds, but using generative AI, it's able to measure exactly what the current needs are of all three devices on the charge mat, and it can eloquently balance the charger so that it does not overheat, even if that means taking down some of the wattage required for the iPhone. You know, technically, I read on the tech specs that AirPower does let you charge 2 iPhones simultaneously, but when doing that, it does limit the power output. So instead of getting, 25 watts on each iPhone, both will instead get 15, which is, faster than the old 5-watt bricks we used to have, but of course not as fast as it could be if you just had one iPhone on there, or one iPhone and a couple of wearables like AirPods and the Apple Watch. But making sure that the device does not overheat is really, really crucial, which is why they mounted the A17 Pro chip fairly centrally in the device and improved the heatsink technology by incorporating a vapor chamber in AirPower. So before, we heard about earlier prototypes that had active cooling systems and fans on the inside. This one is actually using a vapor chamber, which hasn't made its way into an iPhone yet, but it was on the Pixel 9 series of phones, and of course it's been on Galaxy phones and gaming phones for years. But it basically allows them to redistribute the heat and make sure that the charging coils stay cool even under intense loads, and of course adjust the current accordingly in case you're using AirPower in a really hot environment. Maybe you're using it outside for whatever reason. It is somewhat mobile, just needs a little USB-C plug and about 40 watts in order for it to adequately charge 2 or 3 devices simultaneously. So not something you could necessarily power off of just a normal MacBook Pro USB-C port, but if you have a bigger charge brick like I do with multiple USB-C ports to pull from, 40 watts should be achievable for you to charge your MacBook and have AirPower running simultaneously. It is a bit on the pricier end though. Pre-orders start this Friday and it's about $400, but at least it does include a 45 watt charge brick in the box, which is refreshing, but it's it's kind of one I wouldn't recommend using because there's only one USB-C port on that brick. I would have preferred they include something more like what you find in the MacBook Air charge bricks with 2 ports so that you could charge, you know, a MacBook and have AirPower running at the same time if you want to sit down at a coffee shop and just take your watch and AirPods off and put it all on the charge mat. Probably a bit too expensive for me to justify, and I don't have an Apple Watch anymore anyway, but it's cool to see the engineers actually figure out what was necessary to make this charging tech possible, and I hope none of you actually believed in this because it's April Fool's Day. Thank you to everybody supporting this channel directly. It seriously helps us out a ton, as does just watching these videos, and thanks again. This is your Apple Sheep here, and I will see you all in the next one.